Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is another beginner video with some poses that will help you build a strong foundation for beginning your practice. So we'll start off with mountain pose. So you'll just stand tall and straight. You can either keep the feet closer together or hips width apart. You just want to make sure that you keep your legs engaged the whole time by engaging the muscles and trying to curl them inwards, towards the inside of your legs. And on the next inhale, you'll just raise the right arm up and we'll go into a little side stretch. And then exhale and lower the arm, and then we'll inhale and do the same thing on the left side. And then after this exhale, on the next final inhale, we'll lean back for a good back stretch. And then on the exhale, we'll dive forward into our standing forward bend. Now for the standing forward bend, you can either keep your feet closer together or hips width apart. And then the main thing is to try to keep the hips right above the heels of the feet. And you want to try to keep an even distribution of weight in your feet as well. And then you want to try to keep the spine as straight as possible and really bending from the hip joints and trying to bring the abs towards the thighs and the chest towards the knees. It's okay to keep a slight bend in the knees. I do a lot of the times, but as you progress, you want to try to slowly straighten the legs even more, and it'll give you an even deeper stretch in your hamstrings. Okay, now as we're coming out of standing forward bend, we'll just extend the hands out in front of us, and then we'll step the feet back and we'll come into our first downward facing dog position. In this pose, you want to keep pushing through the hands and the feet, grounding both and keeping it really solid. And you also want to try to take the hips up into the air as high as you can while keeping the spine straight. This next step is optional, but on the next inhale, if you want, you can raise the left leg up in the air for a good stretch, and then exhale and lower it. And then on the next inhale, do the same thing with the right leg, raising it up in the air and stretching, and exhale and lower it. And now we will come into forearm plank. So shift your weight forward from downward facing dog, and then we'll come down onto the forearms. You want to try to keep the elbows underneath the shoulders, and we want to try to keep the spine straight and keep the abs engaged. Okay, and then after your final inhale, on the final exhale, we'll just lower down. And then we're about to come into Sphinx Pose. Okay, you want to try to position the elbows under the shoulders with the forearms still flat on the ground in front of you. And then just inhale and then raise up your chest. And you want to keep your legs extending straight back behind you. And try to do like a small, slight little back bend here. After your final breath, you can go ahead and exhale and lower down. And then we're going to come into a tabletop position on all fours with our knees under the hips and our hands underneath the shoulders. And we're going to come into pointer pose. So on an inhale, we'll inhale the left arm up and also inhale the right leg up and back. So your left arm will be extending straight out in front of you and your right leg will be extending straight behind you. And you want to try to keep your hips square with the floor and keep your legs engaged and your abs engaged as well. So after your final breath, you'll exhale and lower the leg and the arm. and then we'll repeat the process on the right side, or on the other side. So we'll inhale and raise the right arm up and the left leg back. And you still want to try to keep the hips square with the floor and keep your abs and your legs engaged. This pose helped me a lot with building up my core and also with finding my balance with both sides of my body. Okay, and then after your last breath, you'll exhale and lower, and then you'll raise up and we'll come facing the side of our mat, and we're going to come into gate pose. So to start off, we're going to inhale and extend the right leg out to the side with the feet pointing up in the air. You want to try to keep the hips square with the side of the mat, and then we're going to inhale and raise the arms up overhead, and then exhale and lean over that right side. Now you want to avoid putting the hand directly on the knee, so either try to go below the knee or above the knee or even on the floor. This pose is really good for stretching out both sides and really lengthening them and strengthening them as well. So after this final breath, we'll come back through center, and then we'll come down onto the left arm on the other side for our side plank pose. So now there are different variations depending on your skill level. We'll bring the right arm directly up, and you can either keep the right leg down, or you can raise the right leg up in the air, or you can keep the right leg down but then extend the left leg out to meet it for the full side plank. And then later on, with more practice, you can do further variations onto this pose as well. Okay, so then after your final breath, we'll come out of whichever position you chose to follow, and then we'll come back up to center and onto our knees, and we'll begin gate pose on the other side. So then we'll inhale, extend the left leg out with the toes pointing up, and then we'll inhale the arms up overhead, keeping the hips square with the side of the mat, and then we'll exhale and fold over to the side. Remembering to keep the hand either below the knee, above the knee, or on the ground, just not specifically on the knee. After your final breath, we'll inhale and come up through center. And then exhale down to the other side for side plank on the opposite side. And remember, you can choose whichever variation that you feel comfortable with at this time. And now after your last breath, we'll come on back to center and we'll move on to our next pose. So we'll be heading into four-limb staff pose. So to start this, we'll turn to face the front of our mat, and first we'll come into the tabletop position. So now four-limb staff pose is like the bottom of a push-up. So to get into this, we're going to pull our hands a little closer to our knees than we would normally for a plank pose. And then we'll go ahead and get into plank position, and then we'll shift the weight forward slightly and then lower down. Important thing is to try to keep your top of your arms, like your biceps and your triceps, in line with the rest of your body, and try to make them come into like a 90-degree angle with your forearms. Now you want to try to keep the body fully engaged, so keep your legs engaged, your abs, and also your arms and chest and shoulders. And then you just want to keep your breathing steady. And after your final breath in this pose, we're going to move into a little relaxing pose, which will be Child's Pose. So for Child's Pose, I normally keep my feet together with my knees as wide as the mat, and I'm trying to take my hips and my butt bone down to the floor as much as possible with each exhale. And then with each inhale, I'm trying to extend longer and just trying to open up my whole spine. Okay, and then after your last breath in Child's Pose, we'll come up into Tabletop, and then we'll exhale up into Downward Facing Dog. And then we will walk the feet up to meet the hands. And then we'll inhale halfway up. Try to find openness in your chest, and then exhale and fold down. Then on the next inhale, we'll come to standing all the way up in Mountain Pose. And then we're going to prepare for Tree Pose. Okay, for Tree Pose, we're going to start by raising the right leg. So you either want to bring it below the knee or up above the knee. You don't want to keep it at the knee and creating pressure. Or you can take it into Half Lotus Pose, which is how I usually like to do mine. Doing Tree Pose in Half Lotus is a little more challenging since it takes a little more flexibility, so it's perfectly fine to just leave your foot either on your leg above your knee or below your knee to start off. I did this for a long time before I progressed into this version. So after your final breath in Tree Pose, we're going to move into Warrior 3. So whenever we do this, you're just going to release that right leg, and then you're going to gently push it behind you and lean forward at the same time. So in Warrior 3, there's several different ways you can hold your arms. You can either keep them out to the side like an airplane, out in front of you, extending out, or you can just keep them along your side, or the way that I choose to do it, just like in prayer in front of your chest. So then for this pose, you want to keep extending the right leg back, trying to keep the hips square with the ground, and then just trying to keep your core engaged as well. Okay, so then after your final breath, you can gently set that right leg down behind you. And we're going to come with our legs in a Warrior 2 position. So you want to keep the right foot in the back angled in slightly, and then you want to extend the left foot out towards the front of the mat. And then you just want to bend, keeping the hips square with the side of the mat. Then we'll inhale our arms up, and then exhale, and you can either come with your forearm on your top of your thigh like so, or you can extend the left arm all the way down to the ground. The important thing is to just try to keep a long line from your foot all the way to the top of the right hand, and just extending that whole side, but also extending the left side at the same time as well. Then after your final breath, we will frame that front leg with both hands. Bring the right leg up to meet the left, for a standing forward bend, and then we'll inhale halfway up and then exhale and lower down. Then you will inhale up to mountain pose, and we'll repeat this process for the other side. So now we'll be doing tree pose with the other leg. So now, keeping the right foot on the ground, we'll bring the left foot up and place it into whichever position you want for tree pose, and then we'll hold this for the duration of the pose. And if you want to, you can change up the arm position as well. I normally just keep my hands at prayer right around my chest, but you can also extend the arms up overhead or just keep them down by your sides. Then after the final breath, we'll release the left leg and extend it back behind us and lean forward into Warrior 3 on the other leg. So then after this final breath, we'll lower that left leg down behind us, keeping the foot angled inwards, keeping the right foot straight towards the front of the mat. We'll come into the Warrior 2 position, and then down into side angle position. So then after your final breath, we'll go ahead and frame that right leg again. This time we'll extend the right leg back, and then we'll lower down and then inhale into upward facing dog. And then we'll exhale and come up into downward facing dog. So we'll hold downward facing dog for a few breaths, and then after the final one, we'll walk our hands back to meet our feet. Inhale all the way up. So now we're about to come into Garland Pose, which is yoga squat. So now keep the feet about hip width apart, facing outwards, and we'll inhale the arms up overhead, and then exhale and lower down into a squatting position. So you want to try to keep the outside of the triceps up against the inside of your legs, trying to create a gentle pressure. Then you want to keep the spine as straight as you can. This pose is great for opening up the hips and also for finding balance, because if you're back too far, you'll fall down on your butt, but if you're too far forward, you'll lean over and fall on your hands. So it's great for finding that balance. So on your last breath, we'll stand up into standing forward bend, and then we're just going to come into a sitting position. So now we're about to come into bridge pose. So we'll gently lay down, and then you want to bring your feet close towards your butt and try to keep them as much underneath your knees as possible. Then on an inhale, press the arms into the ground and raise the hips up into the air. And then once you're up, you want to try to squeeze the shoulders underneath yourself to try to platform yourself up slightly. And then you want to try to keep the arms on the ground, extending towards the feet. You can even interlace your hands if you want to. It's important to try to keep the knees steady and in the same position. You don't want them coming too close to your body or extending too far out in front of the feet. It's just going to take away from this pose. You also want to try to keep the knees at a hip width distance the whole time as well, and don't let them splay out or come too far in. So then after the final breath, we'll just exhale and lower down, and then we'll extend the legs out, and we'll come into corpse pose. So then we'll just really relax and take a few really deep breaths to really clean out our whole system. So what I really like to do in corpse pose is just imagine everything just draining into the mat, just completely relaxing, and every muscle and bone just sinking down into the ground. So not only is it a time for resting, it's also a time for reflecting, to look back on your practice today and just see if you can notice any changes, because our bodies are changing all the time, and just one practice will make the biggest change. So if you keep on adding these small practices up over and over time, it's going to make a huge difference. Okay, so now as we're finishing corpse pose, we'll slowly just start to bring awareness back to our bodies by wiggling our toes and our fingers around and just trying to reawaken the body. Now that we've brought awareness back to the body, we're just going to exhale and then pull the knees into the chest. And you can put your arms around them as well and just give it a little hug, and then we'll rock over onto either side. And if you would like, you can keep your eyes closed during this as well. Then we'll just slowly push ourselves up into a seated position. Take a last few more deep breaths to really just think about everything that we accomplished today, and just to have a clear mind and be able to have full awareness to go throughout the rest of your day and throughout the rest of your week and just try to make the best out of life that we possibly can. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your support, and I hope this video will help you on your journey. So until next time, namaste.